much for staying back for this session. It is always lovely to see people in the room who are interested in the conversation that we are going to have. So thank you very much. As our moderator mentioned, my name is Rumi Mitra. I lead corporate responsibility and operational sustainability for EY GDS, which is an EY business. We are across 10 locations in the world and expanding. So as you all know, with COVID, the idea of technology has become more profound across our lives. And I think all of us know the role that we have, where CSR, for CSR, skills and education has taken a center stage, where we have a lot of our portfolios focused primarily around skills and skills development and education. And with COVID, we all saw that distinct change or the agility that we had to look into to see how technology can play a role. So and I believe all of you would probably resonate with that when we say, all of us had to pivot towards how we can leverage skills, leverage technology platforms to reach the unreached or our beneficiaries. The drivers of adopting technology has been varied, but I believe most of it was around how do you retain your existing beneficiaries? How do you continue learning and education? And how do you reach the unreached that you have not reached before? With all of these various drivers, we all adopted technology in some way or the other. The challenge is it has not been a seamless ride, of course, as we all realize. There has been challenges. There are conversation around who will take it forward. There are conversation around how do we pivot around pedagogy. That's important. It's not about putting some content on the platform and saying, look, this is digital content. There is a whole lot of strategy that is required to be built around it. So we have all tried to figure out what is our best model to reach our intended and new beneficiaries. At the same time, what we have seen, and of course, it was, I believe, much required that we had to innovate quite a bit. We had to look at innovation in content, innovation in pedagogy, innovation in delivery model, innovation in mobilizing our beneficiaries, innovation in retaining them on our platforms, and so on. Now, as the name suggests, Phygital, I believe the word Phygital it probably has been around for a while, mostly in the context of marketing and brand building. There are largest brands who tried to build a Phygital experience for their customers. But Phygital in the context of education and skill probably took a center stage with COVID. And it became very popular when we started looking at, well, is there a possibility of model building in Phygital with respect to skill and education delivery and vocational learning and so on. So we don't know who coined it, but of course all of us found it very useful as a framework to go for. What is also interesting is that, and I'll talk to you a little bit about the work that we do in EY too, like all others. A large part of EY's global focus is skilling the next generation, as we say, with a deep focus around 21st century skills, employability skills, future-focused skills development, all of it focused around how do you really ready the current generations for the jobs to come. Some of those jobs we don't even know how it will shape up. And all of us looked at ways to reach the next billion of our users, of our beneficiaries through digital. But as I was saying, if you will see the panel here and you heard their introduction, we have had challenges with Phygital, we have had successes, and we have done model building, and we are still figuring out a number of ways to reach the last mile. And I think one that is very common across the board is we all have 6-digit figures of impact that we want to create. You know how important it is to have the quantitative number on our headlines of impact, right? So we are all trying to reach there. So, we have a lot of discussions. We got a lot of time since afternoon, and we have been having a lot of spirited discussion around what worked, what does it mean to reach the next million users, or 1,000 users, or 100,000 users. And really specifically, with context to India, what has been a cumulative learning in the efforts that we have taken. So let me start the conversation with asking each of our panelists to just probably talk about their current approach some CSR, some as a part of the overall business model in using digital and overall within the scheme of education and skills development. Sanjay, we'll start with you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Rumiji. So, am I audible? Yeah. So, basically, as many of you might be knowing, that Upgrad started as an online education and skilling company. But in recent past, the company has acquired many other companies, and some of them has some physical presence also on the ground. So, for example, one university in Mumbai, one institution in Hyderabad. So, but it does not mean that it is going towards physical, or it is going completely towards phygital. But, as I see and as we see that no model is a fixed model as of now. What we saw pre-COVID and what we saw post-COVID is completely different, and now people are experimenting with this combined model of digital. So the kind of work which we are doing at the foundation, and so that might give some insight towards the physical model and the online model. That when we started this foundation, we thought that maybe we should partner with NGOs and government organizations who already has a presence on the ground, which means that we don't have capacity, we don't have bandwidth to connect with the learners, but we have the capacity to run the programs, run the skilled programs for the students. So for example, in Telangana, we partnered with Telangana Welfare Society, and we took a lot of students from their colleges who are already BSc engineering BSc students, maths students or science students. And so we provided them with data science program for 6 months, data science and AI program for 6 months. And they already had some data science boot camp program. So whatever they learned through their class, this particular classes, the online classes, helped them in getting extra knowledge, extra skill, and now they are in a better position to be placed in the job market, employment market. And that is what happening after we are just completing 6 months of the first batch. And what we are seeing that some of the girls have already got jobs for 6 lakhs, 7 lakhs per annum kind of thing. And all these girls are first generation learners. So coming to the first generation learners are those who don't have access to good quality education. So this kind of online supplementary education can be really beneficiary, because if we really want to decentralize or democratize education and skill in our country, we will have to experiment these models, online models, digital models, where because the scale is so high in terms of requirement, that not only physical model can help, because there are no physical institutions all over the country, good quality. And at the same time, if there are only online education or online skill being provided to them, there need to be some interface, because they require a lot of mobilizing and also support system, in terms of many of them don't have digital devices, for example. They don't have the digital devices, they don't have digital connectivity. So these organizations which can be functioned as like interface organizations, can always help them in getting computers or tablets or phone or data. So that is how we see this model growing. So I would like to conclude by saying that there is no one model that can actually succeed or take us to the deep of the towards the deep part of our country. So we need to have the both model, and we fortunately we have both these things available. COVID gave us a lot of models by which there are institutions physically available in various parts of the country. It's just that how do we make them digital ready so that more learning, more good quality learning can reach there. That is something which we need to develop further. Thank you. I'll stop here.
So I belong to Common Service Centers network, which is present across the country. We are largely into digital services delivery for Government of India, delivering more than 400 plus services across the length and breadth of the country. CSCs are basically a assisted model where people who have digital access can directly access their phone or a laptop and get the service. But CSCs are a platform or a kiosk where people from rural areas or semi-urban areas can come and get the services. These services are across the network, be it agriculture, education, skill development, insurance, banking, and so on and so forth. The important part over here, we are discussing about the phygital training. So I'll give 2-3 examples of what we are doing right now. We are implementing world's largest program on digital literacy called the Prime Minister Rural Digital Literacy Mission, which was started in 2014, and this is almost the 7th year running. We have trained almost 60 million people in the rural areas with the same model, phygital model, right from 2014. And from 2014, the examinations were online and proctored based. So before COVID hit, we were already prepared for taking exams in the rural areas with a remote proctored exam system. So remote proctored exam system was already there in 2014. Similarly, one more example is a program called Digital Literacy, Legal Literacy with Department of Law, Ministry of Law and Justice. So this was a program where citizens get trained on basics of legal rights, what are their legal rights, and connect the citizens in the rural areas with the panel lawyers at the State Legal Service Commission or National Legal Service Commission, NLSA, SLSA or DLSA at the district level, so that they get access to that. The third part of importance is the financial literacy program. Almost after the demonetization, we have seen the fintech movement, and India has become the world's largest in terms of financial technology. So why people have actually adopted to it? It was both physical training and digital training. Lot of financial inclusion training in the area of banking, in the area of pension, in the area of insurance has actually happened physically. A lot of banks have contributed, SEBI has contributed, RBI has contributed, and many small financial institutions, including academic institutions, CSR funding, donors have contributed. So there are certain examples where there's a government support for some of the programs, there is support from the donors for some of these interventions, which have actually created a phygital model which we are already leveraging over a period of time. And I'll come back on some of the examples which common service centers are doing in terms of skill training and education later in my talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Rishikesh.
Hi. Firstly, thank you very much. I'm going to talk about what we did prior to the pandemic and what we're doing now. Because prior to the pandemic, the complete donor sentiment was different, and so was the beneficiary sentiment, right? And post the pandemic, we all have realized that we need to go digital or phygital, whatever you may call it. TeamLease as an institution has been in the skill space for about over a decade now, right? And we have been working to bring rural youth from farm to non-farm, right? And we had centers, physical centers that operated in 21 states. We had about 40 centers. And I was just telling the panelists before this that we had about 600 regional trainers across these 20 odd states. We had state teams that ran these centers, mobilized folks from the different parts of India and brought them to the centers, and we did trainings, 1 month, 3 months, 6-month trainings, and then we applied them to jobs in the 8 cities that provide jobs in this country, right? Suddenly the pandemic hit. Donations were stuck, right? Nobody knew what was going to happen. The government wasn't saying that we're going to give you a little leeway to finish that donation beyond the 31st of March. So donors didn't know what to do. beneficiaries all were sent home, okay? It was absolute chaos in the skilling ecosystem, right? Because we do a lot of government-aided programs as well. And the complete skilling ecosystem around March of 2020 crumbled. There was no skilling in India. If anybody says there was skilling in India from March of 2020 to June, July of 2020, they've been living in a world of illusion. There was no skilling. Children went back, trainers went back, everybody went back, right? That was when we as an institution, we had our own learning management system which were given to our corporates, to the parent, who support the parent in the payrolling system, where we are doing programs online for learners from tier 1, tier 2 cities. So what we did was the curriculum that we were conducting in these centers, we broke up that curriculum. We identified what portion of that curriculum could be done, which needed to be done in person versus the amount of curriculum that could be done online. When we went online, we had to rethink the whole strategy because trainers weren't ready to move online, leave alone the beneficiaries. So we'll come to the beneficiaries later. Were trainers in regional India who were skilling in India ready to move to a laptop or to a smartphone? No, they weren't. They didn't know how to do it. They had never done it in their lives before. So we had to bring that whole system around training the trainers how to go online, how to log into our LMS, okay? And that took a certain amount of time. Simultaneously, we are talking to donors, telling them, this has happened, this is a way of life, tragedy could happen, but we have to cope with it, okay? While we were doing the training, we also realized that these trainers had managed children on a day in, day out basis where they could touch and feel the children, right? Control in a classroom is very different to controlling a classroom online. So while we introduced them to a new pedagogy or a new method of teaching online, we also had to introduce them to the new whistles and bells that the students would come up with to try and bunk classes or to try and throw pranks in classes, right? Because from the donor perspective, if you have had a 35 batch or a 25 batch, and if you're running below a 75% average attendance, that is no social return on investment that the donor has made. So we had to educate the teachers on how to manage classrooms, virtual classrooms, okay? Then we moved to the beneficiaries because what we got from the parents, when we said, let's say XYZ wanted to move online, this is a new system, oh, phone nahi hai ghar pe, internet nahi hai ghar pe, internet बहुत slow होता है, ठीक है ना? So we solved for those piece by piece, and then we gradually have moved a lot of our trainings in 2022. We moved a lot of our trainings in a blended model. So we haven't given up the touch and feel because it's very important from the section of the target audience that we cater to, right? It is extremely important to feel, they feel what we feel, they are explained in a certain way. So we've moved to a blended learning model where we do virtually instructor-led trainings. We have gamified a lot of stuff, right? Because the child doesn't want to hear, somebody who doesn't look like a Shah Rukh Khan, okay, for 3 hours of the day. You put a Shah Rukh Khan movie on, the child will watch it. But you tell the same child, you sit for 3 hours of day and you learn, you go through a lecture, right? It becomes really difficult. So we had to work on these small aspects. And while we are moving now, India is accepting, okay? India has moved by leaps and bounds. There's been a paradigm shift in the way donors are thinking. There's been a paradigm shift in the way beneficiaries are thinking and their families are thinking. So yes, Phygital is now, but there's been a long, we've completed a 10-year journey in a span of 2 years thanks to the pandemic. So the positive out of the pandemic is India accepted digital forms of education. There is a new NEP that has come out, which is also promoting digital education. So yes, the pandemic had the bad part of the pandemic was all of us in this room suffered at some point in time. But the good part is that rural India and urban poor and the rural poor have jumped a long way by moving to different modes of digital learning. So that's where TeamLease is focused now as an institution, to bring in a lot of digital formats, to bring in a lot of gamification, and to bring in a lot of interesting ways to make the child stay in class, because attendance is extremely important. Thank you.
So hi, at YES, our CSR focus is to inspire youth of India to lead social and economic development by either skilling themselves for market-oriented jobs or taking to enterprise. So like Joel and a lot of other speakers, we've failed fabulously when we moved to a complete online. And I think somewhere with hit and trial and run, this phygital model is what we think really works. And we will talk more as Rumi will throw questions at us, yeah?
So let me start with throwing the question at you, Garima, back. You know, the foundations, CSR foundations and not-for-profit has always been, I would sincerely believe that, you know, that always been on the forefront of a lot of innovations in model, innovations in delivery, in the social sector, education, skills, healthcare, and so on. What has been your experience, Garima, given that, you know, all of us started corporate responsibility has a certain portfolio, you know, you reach the beneficiary. So when you looked at a phygital model, right, how did your beneficiaries take it? What were their reactions? And then often, like I think I heard it from all of us, and I repeated that technology helps you to scale. We all believe that, right? So was that your experience with the foundation? Did technology help you to scale, or did it come with its challenges?
So I think earlier it was all classroom-led, and like Joel was also sharing, it was all trainer-led, right? Somewhere COVID, and somewhere the CSR's obsession with minimum 100,000 to look in your slide, to the board. So I think somewhere that obsession led us to a completely online and a virtual kind of a model. But the issue with that is that you're able to expand your catchment area significantly. But your employment plugging or your market linkage may not expand to that level, right? As a result of which, we definitely failed fantastically, right? But I think now what we are bringing in is really looking at where can you leverage what is already existing. Like for example, LinkedIn Learning, right? So what can be a self-paced learning module that beneficiaries can follow? When you're talking about soft skills, so is English something that need not be trainer-led in a classroom? Can they do a self-paced with tests and self-attestation as well as regular tests? Can you do some self-paced learning as well? So I think that's the kind of blend that is working. And the reason why I say this blend is important is because there is this entire component also of exposure visits. If you're training for retail sector, unless you actually take them on the mall floor and they see what kind of customers can come or what kind of challenges you have, they're not really prepared. As a result of which, even if they get placed, you may lose them to the next festival when they go back home, right? So I think that plus a lot of it also started, it was important to get them one-on-one mentors also, right? Because especially when this phygital model came, like Joel was also saying, there was always an issue with attendance. Right? And even if attendance was all right, you never know whether that person is logged in and is sleeping. Because let's admit, all our kids also did that, right? So, I'm sure beneficiaries were also not different. But I think after the COVID restrictions have eased this blended model with self-paced as well as classroom. Like for example, I always say computers is not something that we could have taught online, right? It's not that effective. Unless you're really giving them a laptop and or a desktop and a keyboard and you're making them practice typing, that is not something that you can give homework and without checking, see that they're doing it. So things like that really made a difference now with the phygital.
Thanks, Garima. I think you brought out two very key aspects. One, the importance of phygital, the importance of physical or on-site or face-to-face in the phygital model. Like the transition is from an online learning, some of it is self-paced and self-learning module, to the idea of an interaction, an engagement, a potential, where a learner and the trainer gets more and more opportunity to interact. So whether it is in the physical, face-to-face, traditional context or in the online context. Now on that same point, I wanted to ask Sanjay, given again Upgrad's overall, sort of what your business model has been and how you pivoted during, a lot of your model was actually anchored on online, right? And when the COVID happened and all of us pivoted around that, what did you have to innovate? Or what is it that you had to do differently after COVID to make sure that your learners are, they continue to engage, that they continue to feel they're engaged and they're not, like we were all saying, 20% that runs away from a course and doesn't complete. What's your experience there?
Yeah, so I think in the upgrade model, there are a lot of not physical engagements, but I would say there is a lot of individual attention paid to the learners. So there are upgrade buddies, for example, who are their mentors. So teachers are different set of people who takes classes. There could be experts also. But there are upgrade buddies, the mentors, to whom learner can reach out anytime for clarification. So this is one way of getting or staying engaged with the learner. So that is a continuous process, and I think in upgrades like experience, the completion rate is more than 80%, and that is because of the engagement. So that is one thing. Second is that continuous, and the second thing is that continuously the company is coming up with new programs, cutting edge programs which has demand in the market, and a lot of focus on working professionals. And we also need to understand that the online model for kids is different from online model for the grown-up people, the professionals, working professionals or college students. So when you are when you are engaging with younger kids, then there is a lot of, we know that when you are strengthening their foundation, there needs to be, like physical interaction, a lot of physical interaction with those kids. But with the working professionals, which is the larger market for company like Upgrad, they need courses where they can upskill themselves during their off time. So even while they are working, they can upgrade themselves and they can get their jobs. So 40% of the people, the learners with Upgrad are the learners who are coming back to do second or third course, or who are referring to others. So we are coming up with a lot of courses which are meant for the working professionals to upskill themselves. And then, the technology wise, like there is a lot of improvement, innovation in terms of using gamification. That is something which is very helpful. And and also, the advantage of online is that you can have data of an individual's progress very specifically. And based on that, the learner's learning curve can be directed or very much specifically helped by the teachers and by the mentors. So that is something, a big advantage for the company, and these are the areas where new things, new programs, new ways of engaging more with learners. Then also, we also did building alumni relationships or alumni, networks, so that the alumni can help each other in terms of career growth. So what youngsters are looking at this point of time, so the company is constantly working towards facilitating learning, growth, and these kind of things through which, the company is trying to learn and, like come up with new ideas and new programs.
Thank you, Sanjay. Again, you brought a very important point, and I think we had also seen as a part of our EY's work with colleges, the ecosystem, polytechnics, ITIs, and school. Of course, the key point that you make, the learning model around K-12 is very different, digital, and because you're designing online, it doesn't mean the model is going to be the same. It's the model is very different for the two aspects, two segments. The other one that you bring forth is that the idea of having a coach, mentor, somebody who's taking you through the course, somebody who's catching up with you, somebody who's there for you to bounce off questions, learn more. I think that becomes a very critical element in the digital model also. Let me come to you, Rishikesh, because your scale or the mandate to scale is huge. Right? We are talking about the CSC Academy. So as a part of the government mandate, you are required to reach the unreached. And here we are talking of the real unreached, who has a lot of problem with access, understanding, language, and so on and so forth. How do you address some of these challenges? If you have to look at the phygital model, does it help you, or is it creating another level of divide if you have to reach your beneficiaries?
So I'll just maybe give you some data about the overall connectivity in the country. Based on the 2011 census, and that is what data which we have right now. After 2023, census will come out and maybe more data would be available. But based on the 2011 census, 94% of the people did not had access to computer, laptop, or a mobile phone. Similarly, there was a survey by National Sample Survey Organization in 2014 and recently in 2019, which also gave similar figures that access to computer, laptops, mobile phone is not there. But I think after Jio and all the telecom movement which we have seen, I think in 2023 census will get these numbers seeking a very high peak. So the problem is of the scale, as Madam mentioned, and we are part of the network where we want to scale it at a very high level. So I'll give 2-3 examples, not from the school education or for general vocational kind of education. We know that in the country we have 6.5 lakh villages, and government is already talking about connecting all these villages with a 1 gig connectivity. That is National Optical Fiber Network. So out of this, we had a program of training around 1,100,000 people in the Gram Panchayats and villages on fiber splicer program. That is basically a fiber which is coming to a Gram Panchayat, put a small data termination unit there so that it becomes available for the users. So users are hospitals or the primary health center in the panchayat, the school in the Gram Panchayat, or maybe some panchayat ghar for Ministry of Panchayati Raj or some other activity which is happening in the village. So that was the aim. So we had a online program where we trained around 80,000 such volunteers or village level entrepreneurs on how to splice a fiber. And then we also had a R&D course by IEEE, which is an institution of electronics and electrical engineers, providing us a certificate course on community Wi-Fi networks. So that was basically put into, and since we were already doing the O&M for Ministry of Communications for getting this fiber, put an end to a fiber and give them a termination equipment and get the network rolling in the villages. So this was one example where actually online training was given to village level entrepreneurs, and then there was a physical experience of actually touching those fibers and getting them active for connectivity. One more example is of dish TV technicians. So we are working with a lot of a lot of companies who are putting on the D2H on the terraces and on the houses, where we are training them online on some of these activities and then giving them on-site training with some of the technicians who go to maybe a terrace and put up a drilling machine, put up a hole, put in a nut and a bolt, and put the device and then get it acting based on the satellite direction. So these are some of the examples. I think the medicine, we already know, the medicine schools, all those schools are actually connected to a government hospital, where actually you get the training. In the school environment also, we had certain practical classes, and we tried out certain experiments physically and some online with virtual experiments. So I think even maybe a few years back, BTech and MTech computer science students didn't know how a RAM or a ROM looks like. And recently there's a data center which has been launched in Greater Noida. And actually engineering students, lot of engineering colleges are there. People can actually see how a data center looks like. Otherwise we were just virtually seeing that this is a data center, but right now we are seeing that. So I think this gives a kind of experience of how physical and digital put together can give us a successful model. Maybe a hybrid approach with both these points would be maybe a good implementation model.
Thank you, Rishikesh. He gave a lot of fantastic examples of ecosystem partnership. I hope you're all thinking about potential partnership with the CSC Academy. I'm just throwing it out because Rishikesh is here, so you can probably connect up with him to see what kind of models are possible. You know, Rishikesh, you gave a number of fantastic examples where innovations have happened. Yes, we have moved forward from the Jugaad innovation, but there are a lot of scope of innovation, especially in this space. And I'll come to you, Joel, because when you were giving your example, you talked about gamification, all exciting terms, gamification, immersive experience. So let me ask you that. When you had to move from a digital model or a physical model to phygital model, what kind of experiences you had to build? Because technically what we are saying, if you go back to where it all started, right, that the experience for a user has to be seamless. The learner should not feel I am in one model here and the other model there. I'm in one structure in digital and another structure in physical, and I'm missing the physical part. So how did you create that kind of a seamless experience for an user?
Okay, so again, we had to create an environment. First of all, before we went to the end user, like I said before, we had to create an environment where the teaching faculty was comfortable with the digital, the physical to digital movement, okay? We actually did a TTT, or a train the trainer, with all our 600 trainers based out of different regions. We first of all bought them online. We taught them how to log into a Google Meet, because TeamLease as a enterprise product uses Google, and we had that access. So we created a Google Meet on our enterprise server, and we actually sent it out to all of them. They didn't know how to get there. The teaching staff didn't know how to get there, right? So we had to have a kind of a note sent out to them to go in various languages, mostly Hindi and English. And also we have a lot of South Indian based trainers. So we had to send it out in regional languages. How do you get onto a web meeting? Okay. The first couple of sessions were just excitement, because, you know, they've heard of each other working in the same environment. So we introduced over 600 people to each other. So that first week was only excitement. Oh, I put a face to a name, right? I've been teaching with this institution for so long, and I know that, you know, there are people sitting out of Karnataka doing the same curriculum that I'm doing in, let's say, in Tamil, in Kannada, right? So we did that. We had to actually change their thought process, because they said, sir, ye training isme nahi hoga, in the various languages that we we got. So we changed their whole thought process of the teaching staff, right? Introduced them to, we got trainers from different institutions who have been doing online training for a very long time and made them talk to these trainers, changed their thought process, brought out all the possible challenges that they had. You know, we asked the teacher all the possible challenges, attendance कैसे लेंगे, क्लास चालू होगा तो अटेंडेंस कैसे लेंगे, उसके बाद में हम बुक से पढ़ेंगे कि हम स्क्रीन पे पढ़ेंगे. So e-books, we started converting our content into e-content, and we started showing them how they can flip a page. So that took a good month, a month and a half, 2 months almost, and we changed that environment. So that was the first shift that we had to make, the teaching. The second thing that we did was wherever we mobilize in India, right? Like I said, we bring from non-farm to farm, from farm to non-farm. We have a whole lot of, we work with a whole lot of panchayats. And we work at the grassroots level with the panchayats. So previously when we did physical classes and children were coming to training centers, right? We used to show them videos of Delhi or Gurgaon or Bangalore or Bombay, so that they adapt, they can at least see what to expect, okay? From a transition perspective from where they are to what they are. So we actually trained the panchayats around them saying that, if you move these children online, okay, there is a chance that they will continue to learn rather than it to be a complete breakdown of the complete learning system, right? Post that, we reached out to the beneficiaries because once in rural India where we train the most, if you've convinced the parent or you've convinced the panchayat or you've convinced the elders of the village, you've convinced the children. 70% of your battle is convincing the elders or the panchayat or the parents or whoever the senior most person in the family are, right? Then we moved to the kids and we actually brought them online and we did. So it was a good 3-4 month process before we launched batches, okay? So this is what TeamLease continued to do right through 2020 till early 2021. And now people have automatically gotten used to the fact that we are moving to a different, we are moving to a more online learning mechanism. And acceptance has come through. But the initial stages were tough. We had to go phase-wise, address all issues, and then move ahead. Thank you.
Right. So all of this comes back to probably one key aspect of any skills and employability program, right? Especially when you're doing digital. And we have heard a lot of cases saying, well, when a curriculum goes digital, it sort of doesn't remain what it was before. It loses some of its edge, etc. So I want to ask all of you, like when you look at moving that transition that happened from your previous model to a phygital model, did it impact your employability numbers or employability targets? We'll start with you, Garima.
Yes, so like I said earlier, we failed fabulously when we moved to a complete online and our placement rates fell from 70% to 7%. A lot of it also had to do with the fact that job market had shrunk during COVID and companies didn't know how to hire or where to hire. Retail business completely had shut. But it had also to do, like I said, with the fact that while you expanded the catchment area, you did not expand your market linkage into the remote areas where you could reach out even through digital. So I think with the phygital, we are now seeing back employment rates coming back to 70%.
70% is acceptable. Right. Great. Okay. Over to you, Joel.
Okay, so I usually get the placement question first, and thank you, Rumi, for giving it to Garima, because everywhere I go, everybody wants to know what is your placement percentage, TeamLease. Okay, so yes, we did. Our placement rates did drop, and like Garima said, we failed. As one of India's largest manpower supply chain companies, or one of the top 5 manpower supply chain companies, nobody was hiring. Okay, not rural India, not semi-rural India, not urban India was hiring. Everything was shut, right? So people went back. The exodus from non-farm to farm happened around June, July of 2020. Okay, people were walking back, people were riding cycles back, and we as an employer didn't know where people were. We didn't know where our employees were. We didn't know where our students were, right, who were at our centers. So that was the worst phase of, and that was the worst time. The lot of news channels, I remember at that point in time, were saying unemployment is at the highest rate. Well, it ought to be, right? So there was a pandemic. India had never seen such a pandemic in all of its existence. So that was the worst time to measure India's unemployment. Okay, so yes, we failed, but I think what works for us is, as soon as markets rebounded or started its journey on the rebound, as soon as markets opened up, we got new mandates. So the first new mandate that TeamLease Education Foundation actually did was, I don't know, I don't mean offense to any of the vegetarians in house, but we got a call from the directors at Licious. Licious is a meat company that supplies meat and is very famous in Bangalore. I don't know if you have it in Delhi. Okay, and they said, we want 400 butchers. And can you train butchers? And we'd never done that in our life. I mean, I've never known anybody to call me and say, can you train a butcher how to cut meat, right? So that's the craziest example I got in around July, August of 2020, right? How did we mobilize butchers in a place like Bangalore? You don't go out. TeamLease has never mobilized butchers in Bangalore, okay? So we went.
Mobilized in other locations?
No, we've never mobilized anywhere in India. Sorry, never, I rephrase, never mobilized anywhere in India. So my mobilizers, smart kids as they are, they said, sir, जितने भी मटन चिकन के दुकान बंद हुए ना, हम उनको जाके पूछेंगे, उनको नौकरी देंगे, उनको ट्रेनिंग देंगे. And that's how we actually got that mandate. So as soon as the markets rebounded, we as a manpower supply chain company and as an educational foundation were getting absolutely crazy mandates. Like Big Basket came to us, all the logistics support companies came to us. They not only came to us, they went to every manpower supply chain company in this country. Okay, but they also came to foundations to train people, because there are people who had been working with them for a very long time, had gone back and didn't want to come back. Okay, cut to, people came back. The markets were flooded, jobs were not available, people were available, because everybody came back after the opening up of in July, August of 2020, right? Cut 3. Early 2021, lockdown number 2, people went back again. So while we failed, we came back and we trained new skills. Then we sent people back again, and we had to wait for people coming back, because people didn't want to take, people were so scared in 2021 to come back that, they didn't even want to come to a training center, and that's when the phygital model actually worked in favor of us, because we were already equipped in 2020 to face this challenge. We didn't think there would be another challenge. India thought we were done and dusted with COVID, okay? And that's what all the newspapers said. And then it hit us again. So yes, we did fail, but I think we were blessed that we had the phygital model, we were ready, we trained, we sent people to work, then they went back, and when they came back, it was a tried and tested model, so we trained them again, we reskilled them, and we provided them jobs again.
That's a fantastic example of pivoting, with COVID and post-COVID, and COVID again and so on, right? I'll ask the same question to you, Sanjay, that did it impact your bottom line in terms of employment? Because you already had a model that was online. So did it have any impact on your number of people, number of candidates who are getting employment post your certification?
It's very important to understand, and we all know this. This is a fact that a whole batch of MBA in 2 years, 20 to 22, they got online degree, means they got educated online, and all of them got employed in some or the other way. So that proves a point that even the employers are ready to take people who are getting online degrees or online skills. So the skill sets are very important for the recruiters, I believe, and that is what we felt. So, as I previously mentioned, that most of our learners are working professionals. So about 40% are working professionals, and 60% are college goers, or those who are attending universities, or those who aspire to go abroad. So the employment and the kind of program we run, and other edtech companies also run, it's so much market driven that it is a kind of connecting the dots between the demand and supply, and that is why it has not impacted. And I would say that the numbers of employment is in fact growing, and there's a lot of emphasis and support. So for example, we have a company, like subsidiary company called Upgrad Recruit, so which constantly engages with different companies, and depending upon what skill they need, we also tweak some of our programs so that the learners get full support and we make full effort to make sure that the learners get fully placed. So that is a big emphasis on their employment. So far, the employment is still growing like it happened during the COVID. As I said, about MBA course is one full good example of how people are open about doing it and how recruiters are open about taking those people.
Same question to you, Rishikesh, but just as we know, this is a very nice train and hire model that worked. You had a requirement, you trained, and it worked for you. Employment was 100%, 99%. In your case, your model was built in that way, and I believe COVID would have provided a better, sort of a push to accept online learning programs than it was before. Rishikesh, in your case, your beneficiaries are not homogeneous at all. They're very diverse. So did you, and while training is a mandate, we don't know how much employment is a mandate. So what was your experience? Did it impact?
Largely, our model is the entrepreneurship model, where we are actually training the beneficiaries to become an entrepreneur. And CSCs are a PPP kind of model, and the world's largest in the world, where we are actually creating entrepreneurs. So we did 2 small programs. I'll just give one example. With sponsorship of SIDBI, we trained around 15,000 youths on basic entrepreneurship with certification from Indian School of Business, Hyderabad on entrepreneurship, and then connecting, giving them a credit linkage with the lead bank in a particular district to open entrepreneurship model at the district level. So this was one example. Another example is from the inclusion side, where we trained around 30,000 Divyang, largely with locomotor disability, with support from Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. And we were not able to make them fully employed. Hardly, I think 2 to 5% of actually that got converted. But 2, 3 more examples, like we did the data collection for the 7th economic survey, whose results were out, I think, 4 or 5 months back. So this was a huge survey of covering around 25 crore odd households and almost 5 crore or 6 crore enterprises across the country. So this was a huge effort where we trained around 1 million candidates in the rural areas on data collection. So that was a physical training and a training on the app on how to collect the data. So when the government takes up the census 2023, where teachers are right now not allowed to do the census, or maybe the livestock census which is coming up, or maybe the water body census which is coming up. So already there is a trained man force in the villages and the gram panchayats who can actually do the survey. And so a lot of baseline surveys and impact analysis later surveys can also be done by these kind of people on the ground. So our aim was largely building the capacity at the ground level so that people are ready. But employability per se is not there in our focus, because we largely do awareness training on a very short term basis, maybe 2 months, 3 months only. So employability doesn't come into the focus, but yes, entrepreneurship is the key aspect with us.
Right. Thank you, Rishikesh. So we do have a few more minutes left, and we would like to open it up for questions if you have any. Yes, first one here.
Hi, good evening. Thank you very much. You saved the best for the last, right? So I think that was a great session. I'm Ramdas Pai, I work for Children International. I'm just sharing more of a perspective. So when the pandemic happened, I think we saw that more as a catalyst rather than a disruptor. And I think we pivoted towards technology, went to tablets. We had kids in preschool doing tablets and the youth. And they're very comfortable with it. The problem that we now have is that our youth are just so technology driven. Now everything, I mean, they do like the classroom for the social bit, but everyone wants a device, they want bandwidth. And so we have more of a different issue about the need for technology. And I don't know how that ties up with, being job ready, but we feel that heat, because it's more capital intensive. Thank you.
That's a very interesting perspective. Any of you want to respond to that?
So people in our country, actually, people have not been trained on using WhatsApp, but largely all the people are ready to use WhatsApp. There are some disruptions where, in fact, we did a training on WhatsApp. So 250 candidates put onto a WhatsApp group and give them training only on WhatsApp. So all the training material, slides, and maybe an audio file in English and Hindi or in a vernacular can actually go on a WhatsApp, and we can actually upgrade it to maybe some other application where we can train large number of people. So that is one example where actually there is no training as such across the country, and we have the largest numbers on WhatsApp.
Yeah. And it's also, I think the example is that you already have smartphone. You're assuming you already have smartphone in a family ownership. You just rely on that, which I don't know if it works in all scenarios. Garima, what about you?
Children, I can imagine that they're demanding, but one way of looking at it is that it is also reducing the divide, the urban-rural divide. How do we get the balance? How do we make them still focus, right? Because classrooms are not going anywhere. I think that's the challenge, but it's true for education, it's true for skilling, and like he said, it's true for entrepreneurship also, right? Even in entrepreneurship, when we are targeting rural women, you are training them in apps like Kitabkhana, because there's enough that when they'll do their costing, they will always forget to write transport as a cost, right? But if it's app-driven, Google Pay, right? So, or any other phone pay, all these digital platforms, once the moment you get trained in it, it brings a step change even in your entrepreneurship levels, right? So I think technology is here to stay, and technology driven for a good will be.
Yeah. I probably want to just interpret that again. My understanding was the question is now users are asking for devices, more technology, give us devices. So we had a good solution here that use existing device. You were saying it will anyway going to stay. So any point on that if users are asking for devices now, what do you do with it?
No, so being talking about my own home, right? I agree with you. My daughter is just on her phone, and it's become an addiction, and so is my son, right? But from where we come from, I mean, like Garima said, it's going to evolve. It's going to be a part and parcel of our life, whether you call it a bad habit or you just call it a habit. This is here to stay. It's not going to change. It's only going to become more and more, it's going to make you more and more lazy as a human being, and the system is going to be more and more efficient. So for me, I don't think I'm looking at it on the flip side and saying it's here to stay. I have to live with it whether I like it or not. Cars are getting digitized or digital, electronic. They're getting self-driven. You have a Tesla that can drive itself. So the digital world is here to stay. So, I mean, we just have to live with it.
Thank you. So do we have time for one more question, or we're good? One more question, if there is.
First of all, thank you very much for the wonderful session to all the panelists as well as the moderator. We talked about skilling, we talked about the pandemic time. A major concern, I belong to a rural development NGO, so major concern is about why is it that the agriculture sector is the most neglected sector in the skilling part, and how do you look at agriculture to make the rural youth employable or job ready?
Sir, it is not an ignored sector. So I'll give you, at least from my organization, when we are talking about entrepreneurship, we define it between micro and nano enterprise is all about, so for farmers, it's about skilling them in climate resilient farming. It's about, vertical farming, chili farming, how can they diversify? It's also about how can they stop water. So we have examples where we've done pokhar pagaras and we've kind of stopped water, and for the first time farmers are like, this is traditional knowledge, right? It was always existing. But it's just, there hasn't been anyone who's gone and got them together so that there can be land where the pokhar and pagara can be built, where technical know-how can be given to say that, okay, this is how you identify a leak, and to make them understand that over the next 3 years, there will be a leak, but eventually after 3 years, the water will stop. So I think there are different forms of skilling. It may not be and I don't think that you want the farmers also to be job oriented, right? You want them. Yes. Yes.
No, I think it is expanding, and I believe we have quick responses here. But just one thing, it is also evolving. For example, in our case, we are talking green jobs. And green jobs has a very strong bearing in the agri sector, whether it is solar pumps, solar, anything that you build. So I think it is a fantastic state. Like in UI, we are very excited with the potential of green jobs, especially in these sectors. And I'll let others.
There are approximately 12 crore farmers, and a lot of subsidy is being given by the government. So we are part of the program where, with the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmer Welfare, where we are connecting their bank accounts with the Aadhaar card, so that the subsidy which the government is announcing for the farmers goes directly into their account. That is one. Another part for the BSc graduates is there is the funding available from Ministry of Agriculture and Farmer Welfare for precision agriculture, or maybe drone as a service, where actually they can use it for sowing or maybe for insecticide spraying and all that. So a lot of work actually is done by the government on that, and I think that cost also has been worked out per acre, how drones can be used. And in fact, in CSCs, we have 3,000 plus farmer producer organizations who are actually actively working at the ground level with NABARD support and Agriculture Ministry support, state government support, in terms of implementing such technology on the ground.
So
the fact that you are able to eliminate the middleman because you've digitized the mandi, that plus I think even real weather updates, I think there is enough work being done here.
No, thank you very much for your question. I know we don't have much time. There's a big time's up there. But thank you so much for staying in and being a fantastic audience. Thank you very much. I would also like to thank all the panelists who have stayed on for the conversation. Extremely exciting and stimulating conversation. So
And
thank
we want
you
to
very
thank
much.
you, Rumi, for the lovely moderation.
Thank you, Garima. Thank you, everyone.